there's a lot of laws that stop women from things like owning property or having a voice, having to cover themselves, having to whatever.
Slow down. I'm not.
Every country.
Can you slow this down? So you're saying they cannot own property?
In some areas.
Is that the teaching of Islam or the teaching of the societal practices?
So here's the thing. Part of it is in the Quran of like ownership and like beliefs of. So
let's talk about this about ownership. Does Islam prohibit or prevent women from owning finances, money, property, anything, business?
I think it does that it belongs to the man first, and then her father.
Absolutely not.
See,
absolutely not.
Humans.
So
humans
this is. No, I'm saying absolutely not. You have total misconception about the Islamic teachings.
So in countries that are...
You said he'll curse the one who's lying.
In countries where...
Why is your God so full of cursing? Our God is full of blessing.
So he also thinks another woman doesn't know how to think. Another Christian thinks a woman doesn't have a brain.
It doesn't matter if
it's
it
full
was two
of
men.
blessing, not cursing.
But that's how it feels. If I were to discuss with a gentleman, just to make my point, if I was to discuss with a gentleman, they won't come and make comments like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially when they see we're discussing with women,
As
they
women,
feel
it's nice to have men who actually see this and understand. Like,
yeah. So that's what I'm saying.
This is a woman's
you know,
thing.
in Christianity, we have two examples now. You know, in one discussion where they're undermining women's intelligence so badly. Anyway, coming back to the point.
World, because so it might not be in the Quran, but Muslim countries do not let women.
So it's not the fault of Islam, it's the fault of people practicing their own kind of social practices. And this is what Islam came to abolish. Islam came to...
But the countries that are Islamic are doing the least to abolish that. In fact, they use Islam as their reason to have these rules. Like we see in Iran right now, they're using literally Islam as the reason to have that.
They're not using the rules from Islam. That's the problem.
But the Islamic countries are doing this and saying it's Islamic.
A country can only be called Islamic if it's implementing Islamic law, not a very wrong interpretation of Islamic law.
I agree. But
yeah.
And yet,
so coming back to the woman owning, having her own business.
Iran needs your voice right now because the men need to hear it from a man.
Yeah. Iran is a politicized country. They have their own kind of understanding of religion, which is not even the teaching of the Prophet.
But every Muslim country has this then, because every Muslim country does not allow the women to talk,
we have to
have jobs, or have equality in marriage or
Can I
ownership.
take one by one because you're like giving me so many points and I can't deal with them.
I don't mean to talk about every single point. We're talking about a whole broad thing.
But the reason I'm saying is, let's talk about owning property. Owning property. Firstly, it's not the teaching of Islam that women cannot own property. In fact, if a woman has her own business, she has her own money, own finances, she could be a billionaire, the husband cannot take a single penny from her. That's the right Islam gives to the woman.
I know people who are very, very educated on the Quran and on the teachings that are not the Quran, but like the life teachings. And I forget the word right now, but I'm not able to discuss it with you because I'm not really good with the details of the Quran enough to challenge you or disagree or
but
know
you
if
see,
you're not telling me the truth because I'm not aware enough.
So
what I am
it's
aware
interesting.
of is the countries that call themselves Islamic, running by Islamic law, people who are educated in this.
Can I make a quick point?
People who are very, very, very much studying specifically this disagree with you.
Whose works on an academic level have you studied? They say in Islam, the teaching of Islam, because you even said whether I'm speaking the truth or not. So even to a very basic level, we should have the decency of giving the other person this understanding that you are speaking the truth. I don't have any reasons to believe otherwise.
That's not true at all, because people are always going to say what they believe, but aren't necessarily the truth.
Not necessarily. I would take you. So the principle that you have now is quite interesting. For me, as a Muslim, I would take any person on the general face value that you are a decent human being, you are a truthful human being, you are a compassionate, merciful human being, until it's proven otherwise. So you are not guilty, you are innocent until proven to be guilty. Can I make my point? Sorry.
Wait, hold on.
Can I finish my point, then you can speak? Islamic principle is a higher principle than the one that you are upholding. You are innocent. I'm just telling you.
You're telling me
principle.
your idea that's not true.
Fine. Okay. I'm telling you, we should be all innocent until proven guilty. Are you saying, can you get a better ideal than that?
So what you're doing is an illogical circular argument that
How is it a logical circular?
So you just talked, and I did let you finish. Can I actually
Go
say my
ahead.
point now? Otherwise, you're just talking over me and
Sorry,
using
go
this as
ahead.
a platform to spout a lot of BS of your own.
No, carry on.
You can speak your own truth about yourself as best as you possibly can. That's the best all humans can do. And I can take you talking about yourself and your own beliefs and your ideas on what the Quran says and means as your ideas. But there isn't a truth that I can believe you speaking because you're talking about your ideas, about yourself, your own beliefs. But absolutely not. Nobody can speak a truth that is contested and debated and discussed among scholars who study it. Never mind somebody at Hyde Park that I don't know how much of a scholar you are on this. And people debate this, which means there isn't a truth, black and white. So your circular argument that's illogical and irrational is that I am lesser minded or lesser believed because I have the logical understanding that you can only speak your own ideas. You can't tell me what is true or not true in the Quran. What I can do is understand that the Quran is debated deeply among scholars. I am not a scholar of the Quran. I'm interested in it, but I am not a scholar, which means you can say anything you want about what it says. But I have friends who are scholars in the Quran, and I'm pretty sure they've said some different things, which means now I'm going to say, do I believe you? There is things that are debated among scholars, so of course I'm not necessarily just going to believe you just because you're talking in Hyde Park.
Okay.
That's an illogical, irrational thing to do as a human being. So my ideals in a sense are higher to understand that there's rational, logical truths, but even if you spoke about your own ideas, ideas on humans, on themselves, change constantly. We're growing and evolving. There isn't a black and white truth, as you were just saying. So my point being that it's a very good, smart base layer in a conversation to understand that you have ideas, but there's no truth to them. My ideas that I express to you aren't even a full truth because I don't have years and years and years to express all the depths of those truths. And our language is so fallible, especially English. It's such a fallible language.
Right, thank you. Now, two things. Firstly, I was asking you about which scholar have you read who says...
No. Listen to friends just talking like this, talking, but asking questions. But I can't be specific because my memory's a little bit.
I would appreciate if you can find me a scholar that says that Islam, the teaching of Islam, which is Quran and the prophetic teachings, prohibits women from ownership of wealth, finances, businesses, and so on.
Land, houses.
Anything, ownership. You said there are scholars, and you somehow. Can I finish?
Oh wait, did you want me to answer the question?
Can I finish? I've not finished.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You wanted me to answer that.
No, not yet. Because I said two things, and this is one of the things. The second thing I said, are you suggesting in any way, shape, or form that what I gave you an ideal that you should be innocent until proven guilty? There's a better ideal than that, and you said this was a circular argument. So now let me ask you, rephrase my question to you. The innocent, we should be treated as innocent until proven guilty. Now, can we get a better ideal than this?
You said a bunch before that, and
No,
then you
I'm only addressing two things. Forget all the bunches like you did. I couldn't even remember. There's so many things you said. So that's why I said slow down. Two things. One is about ownership, which you somehow disregarded me.
You ask a question and then you talk over me.
No, I'm clarifying. I'm not finished.
And then you finish.
I'm not finished
and then
yet.
you say you're not finished.
I'm not finished because
you asked me a question. I went to start, and then you talk over me and keep trying to.
Did you hear my
speak.
question though?
Yes.
Go ahead. Answer, please.
You said a whole bunch before that. When I talked about a circular argument, it had to do with all the stuff beyond that. If you want to cut out and pretend that everything else you said and meant and got across doesn't exist,
like what?
Well, that's silly. Because you were talking about how, oh God, no, ADHD memory. Great, good fun. I want to stay on point a little bit.
No, like what?
I want to stay on point. Question number one.
Yeah.
That's a long question. I'm going to answer question number two first.
Yeah.
The beginning part had to do with the circular argument and how you used innocent until proven guilty as a finishing point to a circular argument. But the finishing point, should we be innocent until proven guilty? Yes, I mean, I'm a democratic believing person, so yeah, I believe in that.
So you agree with the principle?
That part of the principle, some of the other stuff you said, no.
No, what other stuff? You don't even remember the other stuff.
No, I do.
So you agree with the principle,
so
which
you
I
talk
said.
over and then you jump in.
No,
and
I'm
then you
confirming.
change it, and you
I'm
twist
confirming.
It. You're not confirming. You're twisting it.
How am I twisting?
Oh, here we go again.
Now,
Back
please
to
tell me, how am I
So
to
I answered number 2. Number 1, when you're asking about who of any scholars points towards the Quran saying that women should not have property and ownership, I can name off a whole bunch of Muslim countries. We all know them.
Scholars, not a country. You're making a logical fallacy now. You should know because you talk about logical
Can I
fallacies.
finish? Okay.
I'm letting you finish, but I'm just telling
No,
you,
you're
don't make
not
logical
telling
fallacies
me.
as you speak.
Well, you don't know it's a logical fallacy because I actually haven't finished. So in the conversation of this, there are many, many countries that are Muslim
Not interested in countries.
And they're run by
Strawman
Islamic
arguments.
scholars that come together and make decisions and believe this is what the Quran is saying. And they are scholars
Like who?
that make the rules for those countries.
Like who?
Iran, Saudi
No,
Arabia,
like which scholar have you
Qatar.
read? And which works?
He wants to be specific with
Yes,
names, but
exactly.
he's asking, can you name a scholar? And if
Yeah.
I don't remember a specific name,
You
of
have friends who's a
person,
scholar.
It doesn't exist, and that's not a rational argument. And we can't have a
No.
conversation if you're like, I can't remember a
You are
name.
generalizing based on your ignorance.
No.
And
You asked
you're
a
straw manning,
question. See, now
which
you
I didn't even say.
I'm ignorant because I can do what he asked me to do, but it's not a specific name, which is just such an
No, substantiate your claim. You said there are scholars.
conversation.
No, you said there are scholars.
Yes, and I don't remember the exact names, and then it doesn't exist, or I'm not being rational because I can point to them. I'm pointing very clearly to them.
No,
We
you're pointing to
know-
countries, not scholarship.
We know that Saudi Arabia is run as an Islamic country. Yes, we all
We're
know
not interested
Saudi
in
Arabia.
countries. We're interested in scholarship.
And the people who come together.
You're
to
conflating
say,
two different things.
the people who come together to say this is what the Quran says, this is how we make our laws in Saudi Arabia, in Iran, in Qatar, in Bahrain.
Can women
They
inherit
come
property in Saudi
together.
Arabia? Yes, they can. So you
A woman
you're
in
bringing an
Saudi
example
Arabia
which
was
refutes your
murdered.
point.
Her jalabia, she was driving and it slipped up and she was murdered.
So
I think you're confusing between a state or a government and a religion.
No, I'm not confusing it, and that's what he's saying too.
In Saudi
Point is,
Arabia,
when
may
you
I
have
ask you?
laws- When you have laws in a lot of these countries, and I want to back up because you just joined. I travel to these countries. I love them. I love Islam. I think it's a very beautiful
in Saudi Arabia, brothers and sisters,
religion.
can women inherit right? Can they own
Do you know
business?
this for sure?
They do. So now they're refuting your ignorance on this matter.
In Morocco, brother, my wife, she have a house, she have a car, she have a land, and she have a shop. I have good
But if
nothing.
she has a husband, is it
I
hers?
am a husband, I am her husband.
Refuting
I'm her
you again,
husband.
second point.
I'm a Muslim,
How many
she's a
times do you want to be
Muslim.
rinsed?
Wants me to show her picture with cover everything, and she have everything. I have got nothing, I'm just working here, and she got everything good. Here we go, it's Morocco again.
Where is this?
It's Morocco.
So you got Saudi Arabia and
Saudi
It's
Morocco.
an
Arabia.
Islamic country.
Yes, it is.
That's it, that's it.
But it's Morocco's government doesn't control Saudi Arabia's
No,
government.
we're not talking about Saudi Arabia, we said
But I'm
countries.
talking about Saudi Arabia.
Sorry, sister, you
This
said
is my
countries.
point.
Have you been to Saudi Arabia?
No, but I
No,
have been to
hang on.
Morocco and Egypt and Jordan.
Where did you hear that in Saudi Arabia, women cannot have their own business and own money?
From Saudis,
From Saudis?
Saudi women.
From Saudi women?
Yeah, they
And you
travel.
trusted them?
More than you,
Why?
because they're women from their own country.
No, why did you trust them more than me?
Have you been to Saudi Arabia? Have you been to Saudi Arabia? You're
Yeah,
asking
many
me these
times.
questions. Okay.
Yes.
And are you a woman in Saudi Arabia that
So
understands
it has to
how
be a
women are
woman
treated?
to be truthful.
But you think I have to have traveled to Saudi
No,
Arabia?
let's
to
understand your
understand?
logic.
Your logic.
If you're a
I'm
woman,
using-
then you can be
Hold on, I'm
truthful.
using
If
your
you're a man,
logic-
you cannot
I'm
be.
using your logic on you. You asked if
What
I'd
is my
been there.
logic?
You asked if I'd been there, as if I could possibly know something or not know something based on if I'd even been in a country. Like I can't read.
No, isn't
I
it
can't
isn't it
listen to
reasonable
women, I can't
if we
listen
haven't
other
been to a
people.
country, then we
I
may
can't
know less about it?
read about the country, but I couldn't possibly know
Fine.
if I haven't been
Right.
to the country.
So
I was using
do I have to be
your-
a woman to
I
be
was-
truthful?
I was using your lack of rationality against you just to show you
How have I been
it's-
irrational?
You asked me if I'd been there as if.
Why did I ask you for?
Again, I'm saying it again. You asked if I'd been there as if I could possibly know or not know, read something, hear something, know, learn about something, based
Let me
on
tell you why I asked you.
my physical ability to be in a country.
No, let me tell you why I ask you. If, for
But I will
example,
find you answers while you're talking. I will try to find you some
go
scholars.
ahead, no problem. You take your
Because,
time.
you know,
I have
we
enough
kind of
time, no problem.
have
So
a
what I'm saying is, sometimes we may not know what's happening politically, economically in a country unless we've been there inside. Like if you haven't been into North Korea, for example, you don't know what's happening in there. If you haven't been to China and
You
what's
can have some ideas about laws from
right,
people who've come
some
out.
idea,
You
but
can
this some I
listen.
agree.
You can
But there's
read.
some
It's
ideas
not
that
like
you may
Saudi
have.
Arabia doesn't have
May
their
I-
laws open for
May I
people.
finish?
But the
There's
answer
some
to the
ideas,
question
some
was-
ideas that you may have
The actual answer
may
to the
be
question
mistaken.
was, do you you are saying that a country is not run, Muslim countries are not run by Muslim people who study the Quran. And I'm saying they are run by people who study the Quran.
And where did
who
Saudi
come
Arabia
together
implement this law?
and
Women
make
cannot have
decisions.
properties.
That-
Where do you get this
I
from?
didn't-
Where do you get this
You're
from?
twisting all the things I'm saying.
What
I'm
have I
talking-
twisted?
So what I said.
No, you keep accusing me. What have I
You
twisted?
just jumped over me. So what I said.
What have I twisted? Sorry.
Do you hear this? He's asking me a question, but will not let me.
No,
say
you
3
accuse me
words,
of twisting.
and he talks over
I would
me.
like you to
And
substantiate.
immediately starts talking as soon as I'm trying to answer the question.
Oh, go ahead. You're answering.
So
I'm
he just
sorry.
talks in and
No,
talks
no.
over
I'm
so that
sorry.
he
You are
can't
answering.
speak.
She's going to tell us
This
how
is the
I'm
point.
twisting. Go ahead.
Are you actually going to let me?
Yeah. That's the point.
Talking to men is so funny sometimes. Like,
Now it's a man and woman issue.
yes. How did I come up to you? You were talking to a man about a man and woman issue, about jumping
I'm
in
letting you
and
speak,
talking
and
over
you have a
you're
problem with
not.
that.
Okay, I'll just have to talk over you because you just keep jumping in on me. I talked about a bunch of points, and then you jumped on this one, and you started talking about it in a way that I didn't actually specify and say this. I didn't say all of this stuff exactly. You asked me, tell me a scholar. I'm telling you that scholars that study the Quran, that study what they believe the Quran to be, are the people who come together and make decisions for countries that are run by what they call Muslim law. And you can say it's not Muslim law. You can say, you told me that you disagree, that they're not running the way the Quran says. But I'm just saying, I might agree with you on this. However, it is scholars of the Quran who come together and say, this is what the interpretation is, and these are the laws we're making based on the Quran. I don't need to give you exact names of all the mullahs and imams
Because you haven't
and
got any.
people, but there are. You can't refute that all these countries.
Something that is known
are
obviously by necessity.
completely- You can't refute that all
Do you know
these
why?
countries are not people who study.
Do
the
you know why
Quran.
I'm challenging you on this point? There are something in Islam known by necessity. There's a principle in Islam called al-ma'lum min ad-din bid-darura. What is known in the religion by necessity. Every Muslim knows that. For example, drinking alcohol, committing fornication, adultery.
Drinking
Can I finish my
alcohol
point?
is in the Quran.
Can I
That's
finish
not
my
just by
point?
chance. That's in the Quran.
Can I finish
There's
my
a very
point?
specific part in the Quran
Can
about
I
that.
finish
That
my
one I know.
point? Yeah, without
But
being
your point seems
interrupted.
to be wrong,
Without
because
being
you're talking about
interrupted. Without being interrupted.
Are you going to just speak false points, though? Stay to the point. Don't give
Without
me
being
examples.
interrupted.
Stay to the point.
Without being interrupted.
Stay to the point.
So I can interrupt you like you interrupt me. That's you're telling me. Fine, no problem. I will interrupt you when you speak too. So
You did. No, you did. You continuously interrupted me. But then you start speaking false points, and you're
What
changing
false
the
points?
subject.
What false points?
You're talking about how alcohol isn't in the Quran. It's very specifically in the Quran. About not
what am I
drinking
saying? Alcohol isn't in the Quran?
Yeah, you used alcohol as a point to say that there's things that aren't in the Quran that are just
That in-
known.
that-
It
that
is
aren't in the Quran.
It is in the Quran about drinking.
Did I say it's not in the Quran?
You said that it's a known thing, that there's things, and you use that as an example. It is in the Quran about not drinking alcohol. That one
Do
I
you
know.
even understand what I'm talking about? I am saying there are things that are known by necessity. Do you know why? Because they're already mentioned explicitly. In the Quran says, do not approach, do not drink, right? Don't come to prayer when you're drunk. There's several levels of alcohol banning in the Quran. So if a scholar now decides and say, it's okay to sell alcohol and run alcoholic business in your country, in a Muslim country, in Saudi Arabia or otherwise, we know that these are wrong. This legislation that is derived from this faulty interpretation is not rooted in Islamic text. Likewise, women, whether they can own businesses, properties, lands, any kind of ownership, it is known by necessity because of the explicit text in the Islamic sources. That is my point. Instead of saying, oh, I don't know, maybe I've heard it wrong, let me go and check up with my friend who's a scholar, rather than
That's
assuming.
not what I was saying. You're twisting.
Wait.
You're twisting. No, it's not
Don't
fair to
interrupt.
twist.
Don't interrupt.
I will interrupt.
Rather
you.
than,
When
rather
you're
than.
twisting and saying something I didn't say, I will interrupt. It sounds like we got a riot going on there.
That's not going to help you.
Safety first.
This discussion is going to help you in an argument.
If there's something going on that I need to leave, because
Don't
I-
worry, we've got police over there. Look, can you see the police car? Can you move a little bit? Can you see the police car? Look, just waiting just for you.
I see why
Look,
nobody's
over there.
talking to you.
Can you see? That police car is going to protect you. Don't worry about it. I will call that police if something is going to, any harm going to come to you.
Did you not
I
hear?
will give my life to protect you.
Did you not hear what was happening over there? Are you just so dumb that you're like, I'm just going to ignore?
Hang on. What happened over there?
Possibly something over
What happened
there.
over there?
There was a whole bunch of noise and stuff and
Oh,
whistles
noise.
going off.
So you're interested in the noise rather than a
Dismissal of women.
meaningful discussion.
This isn't
So
meaningful
second point.
if I'm trying to protect and make
Second-
sure. No. You're being very rude right now, and that's where I end things.
You're running.
There was a bunch of noise and whistling. Just because you didn't
happens
hear
all the time. Are you the first time in Speaker's
I was
Corner?
taking a moment to make sure about my safety and surroundings and what's happening
We will
over
protect you
there.
here.
Don't worry.
Oh my God!
Two
you're so
ladies here,
stupid.
Muslim ladies, will
That
protect
has
you.
nothing to do with it. It might be. It's not about you guys. It was.
They will
happening over
protect you.
there.
If you distrust
I
a
would
Muslim
protect
man,
them.
Muslim
You're
woman
just
will protect
being
you.
Stupid. You're just being really dismissive and rude. I would protect them and you just the same. However, if there's something going on over there,
Yeah.
it's good for our conversation to take a friggin' moment to stop to see if we need to maybe just have something else happen. Because our conversation is not actually the most important thing in the world. If people were dying over there,
Oh,
you
people
could
are
shut
dying
the
in
fuck
Speaker's
up.
Corner.
Oh,
You've come into a battlefield, isn't it?
this disrespect is how this is how
You
we
call that
end it.
disrespect?
He just runs in circles and gets disrespectful. Now we're done.
Of course you're done, because you have no argument. You've been
You were
rinsed.
talking to
You've been
a man
rinsed by the
about
Saudis, you've been rinsed by the Moroccans. What else do you have to defend?
See?
Not Saudis, but you know about Saudi
No,
Arabia.
this is what you do. He just twists it and says.
What did I
he
twist
has
about?
won- He has won the argument because he's.
Did I say I won the argument?
Yes, you just did.
You got yourself rinsed for the arguments. If you cannot handle the argument, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. Anyway, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, just to show to the whole world, we're living in an interesting world in which people have interesting perspectives. What the lady initially was disagreeing with the principle about, we should be treating everyone that you are innocent until proven guilty. You are disagreeing with it initially. But when challenged, she said, oh, I sort of agree with it. So there are people out there who think you are the worst person. You are not truthful, you are deceitful, you are perhaps a terrorist, a murderer, and so on. This is the mentality people have nowadays. We need to address this. We need to know, why is this so? Is it because they've been brainwashed by something they read, something they hear? What is brainwashing them? What is programming them? What can we do to help them? The discussion that we wanted to have, as you can see, she became very toxic in that discussion. She couldn't handle a basic, minimal level discussion in terms of having the basic understanding that it's okay, you seem to be a nice guy, so let me have a conversation with you. Instead, the toxicity comes quite clear. If this is the level of intolerance people are demonstrating, we as Muslims have a lot to do. Is it because our character, the way we behave, is it because I misbehaved here? Then please tell me what I need to do to rectify myself. There's something definitely wrong with my approach, something definitely wrong with the way I speak, the way I communicate. Or maybe she was already toxic before. In fact, that's what she told me in the very beginning. She had a conversation over there and she experienced that. So the toxicity she's now got is not just me personally, with all my weaknesses, but she has been toxified, if I want to use this word. So what can Muslims do? Number one, we need to remember that if we are shadid and shaddan ghalidan, we are so strong and so, in our approach, then we are not going to win the hearts of people. We have to remember we need to be softer. This conversation demanded something different in my estimation. Softness is not something what she needed, because I started soft at the very beginning. Didn't do anything what happens? I mean, I may be wrong in my estimation, but if you go to a doctor and you go with a pain, and the doctor gives you paracetamol, comes back again, next day, say, I'm still having pain. Is not going to be soft and give you, let me give you painkiller paracetamol again. It's not going to work. He has to give you something stronger. So when someone is not reasonable with a soft approach, perhaps there's something wrong with the psyche. You need to really stir them up in their intellect, inside, so that they can be a bit more logical and rational and consistent. We saw inconsistency. So what can we do then? Assalamu alaikum. We are seeing a lot of people, Sheikh, they have very negative image of Muslims. The lady has traveled to Muslim countries, and yet she thinks Islam does not give right to women to own any property whatsoever. Whatever belongs to the husband or the brother or the son, whatever, she has no right to own her own land, house, business and property. So when I asked her, where from? Where do you get that from? Scholars. Scholars decided. So, is it true in Saudi Arabia women cannot own any property and businesses?
Firstly, that's not true. I mean, even neither in Saudi Arabia. In fact, I know a senior businesswoman actually in Saudi Arabia who are a senior businesswoman who ask a certain fatwa about the amount of zakat, which means they had a humongous amount of zakat that they pay every year, and they are asking about the details how they can use their zakat, and they are asking about other personal things. So that's not true. I'm not here I'm not Saudi myself. Sure. I'm not here to defend any government or any country or whatever, including my own country. There are some habits from the Muslims which is bad habits from the Muslims. This is not necessarily from Islam. Islam honored the women. Islam honored and give them the right to inherit, give them the right to trade. And even at the time of the Jahiliyyah, women, they didn't have that right. They didn't have these rights. And yet when the Prophet ﷺ came, he gave them their rights. And in fact, he ﷺ, he said even that for them to come to the masjid to own or to trade, and at the time of the Prophet ﷺ used to be women who used to be merchant and known with this. And there is a famous hadith that one of the women who her husband died. And then she said there is another woman who's a widow or a divorcee, but she is a rich woman. She came to ask the Prophet ﷺ, she said, can I go and do my iddah at her house, to this woman's house? And then the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he said, no, that woman, many men goes to her place. Meaning, many men goes to her place because she was a merchant. So people, they come and trade with her. Then he told her to go to do iddah somewhere else. That shows during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, women used to be senior businesswomen, senior, not just only small, on a big scale. And the Prophet ﷺ, the best example, he married Khadija radiallahu anha, and she was as well senior business as well women radiallahu anha. And the same thing for any Muslim countries, you will find many women, they have their own business, they have their own trade, they have their own things. But the problem is, which is we have to face it as Muslims, that people mix Islam with culture. Certain cultures which is literally demonizing women, putting women down, that's the culture. This is not from Islam.
Sure.
And that's totally which is not acceptable.
Jazakallah khairan. So this is quite clear now. Islam does not prohibit or prevent women having ownership of wealth, land, property, businesses, finances, whatsoever. So the reason why people have this misconception must come from somewhere, and you gave one of the example, is our own cultural practices may have given the wrong impression. So as Muslims then, we have a role and responsibility and duty to tell the people what is Islamic teaching in contrast to what our cultures are that needs modifying. Our cultures needs uplifting to the ideals of Islam. Now, what other things Muslims should do to remove this negative impression of Islam from communities like we've seen here, even in Britain, in the age of technological advancements and information, people have misconception about Islam, what we believe and what our faiths are. So what should be the role and responsibility of Muslims, lay people and our scholars?
First of all, we need to understand a few things. That even our bad practices in some Muslim countries, it doesn't have an impact on their own system. It actually has impact on the Islamic image. Because people nowadays, as you mentioned, during the technological, for example, development nowadays, people, they can see things now, they can observe certain things and certain practices by Muslims. For example, in some countries in the Middle East, still women, they cannot claim their right of inheritance. They cannot do it because of the culture. Even people, the culture, they will look down on a woman who's doing this, where she's doing her Islamic right. And the courts, the Islamic courts as well, supporting them to claim their rights. So what we have to do firstly to educate our people about these things, about these issues, to educate women. And here that's the key thing, the key role is to educate them about their rights in Islam. Because unfortunately, not many women, they are educated about their own deen. They think, should I do that? Because she thinks, because of the cultural aspect, thinking that she's not entitled for it. She's not entitled for her inheritance. She's not entitled for her rights as a Muslim, as a woman, or as a human being. Now, because of this, that they have to be educated firstly. Secondly, educating the culture. We have to remove all of these misconceptions from these cultures. And we have to say, this cultural thing, this is not from Islam. Actually, those are things from the Jahiliyyah, from the pre-Islamic time, which Islam came and banned them, stopped them. And at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, for example, you'll find at the time of Umar al-Khattab, a woman will stop Umar al-Khattab to talk about certain things. On the khutbah, she will say to him, no, you said such and such, where Allah said such and such. Can you imagine? That's how much they have the free to speak and to stop a Khalifa, a leader of the Ummah, which he was ruling Iraq and Syria and even and Egypt and all of these countries was under his leadership, and yet a woman will stop him in the khutbah to tell him this is what you said is wrong. My point is, because that's the amount of education. This is the time. The same women who are, if you go back a few years before, they used to be buried alive. So Islam shift them to have not just only the right, they claim their right, they are as well entitled to interfere with the politics, with certain things, which is, and they are entitled to do that. That's something from Islam, from Islamic teaching. So we have to educate our communities about the rights of women in Islam and what Allah gave them, and we have to separate that between cultural things and as well Islamic principles. As well, it is the duty of the scholars and people and influencers. It is their duty as well to raise awareness about these things, in order to give what is the right image of Islam, to educate the people, Muslims and non-Muslims, about what is Islam is talking about. We have to point out to say this is not from Islam, and Islam is saying 1, 2, 3. This is the duties of Islam, of the Muslims, and this is the duty of the scholars and the influencers to educate the public and the masses about these things, and to remove these misconceptions and to tackle these issues, these things, because at the end of the day, this is the important thing: is the image of Islam to the others. The image of Islam, we don't want the image of Islam to be, for example, to be looked at it as backward, as something that demonize or dehumanize, for example, women. That's not right. Actually, Islam is to give the right to the people who have the right. And Allah says in the Quran, Allah ya'murukum an tu'addu al-amanati ila ahliha. Allah command you to fulfill the trust to the people who have their authority upon them, whether women or men, the same thing. Yeah. وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُم بَيْنَ النَّاسِ تَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. And if you judge between people, you judge according to the justice, as Allah said in the Quran. So Allah has mentioned this in the Quran. So this is the message of the Quran, and this is the message of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in fact, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to, in the day of Eid, will give khutbah to everyone, men and women, and will go specify women with a khutbah for them, alayhi salatu wasallam. Which is again, that's a neglected and an abandoned sunnah from not many khutbah. They do it nowadays. He will specify women to give them khutbah for them. That's how much they used to be precious in the sight of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's why they used to do that. Alayhi salatu wasallam.
Barakallahu feek.
Barakallahu, Allah barik feek. Jazakallah khair. Allah barik feek. Jazakallah khair.
وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Jazakallah khair.